Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan Little. Today, we are going to be discussing not one, not two, but three big mistakes that you must avoid if you want to be able to beat any sort of cash game, even at the small stakes, like 1-2 no limit. My children are being loud outside the door. Hopefully they calm down. You probably can't even hear it, only me. Don't worry, I will not be distracted. Whenever you are playing small stakes cash games, you need to avoid making big mistakes. One big error each session can take you from having a solid winning session to a losing session. And if you have gigantic flaws in your poker strategy all around, well, you are just absolutely going to get crushed. And fortunately for you, many players in the small stakes games have a lot of big errors in their game. You may ask, how do I know that? How could you possibly know how good my opponents are? Well, the answer is that if they were winning players, they would have moved up. If your opponents at 1-2, 1-3, 2-5, 5-10 are playing these games and there are bigger games available in your local area, it to some extent implies that they are not good enough to move up to the higher level. And if you're not good enough to move up to the higher level, especially in the smaller stakes games, like 1-2, 1-3, and 2-5, you have big holes in your game. So, in this webinar, you are going to learn some pre-flop leaks to avoid, also why slow playing is completely killing your win rate, and why bluffing is vital. Mistake number one that almost all of you make, because I see it in the hand histories you post in the YouTube comment section, and that you email me to support@pokercoaching.com, and that you post in the Poker Coaching Discord. You don't play well pre-flop. We literally have charts for you. All you have to do is look at them, recognize what they roughly look like, and then do it. But a lot of people simply do not do it. They just want to splash around and try to gamble a lot instead. Realize that you do not win by modeling your strategy after the losing players at the small stakes games. It would be asinine to think that you're going to look at someone who is failing and that you're going to copy what they do and that you are somehow going to succeed. But that is what somehow, some way, a lot of people think. Hello to everyone in chat. You're going to find that you need to play tight, aggressive poker. Whenever your opponents are splashing around with all sorts of nonsense, you have to play tight and aggressive. You need to increase your 3-bets and stop playing loosey-goosey, having a sandwich poker. You're also going to want to make a point to fold way more often when you are out of position. And that is even more true against raising ranges that should be quite tight. What about rake? What about the rake? When the rake is big, you must play tight as well. And if you 3-bet and everyone folds, you win the pot immediately, and often you do not pay rake, or you pay a minimal rake, which is also a very, very big benefit. So let's discuss playing tighter from out of position. Here we have two different charts. Here we're playing 100 big blinds deep in the big blind versus a low jack 3 big blind raise. And here we have 100 big blinds deep in the small blind versus an under the gun 7, which means under the gun if we were playing 7-handed, 3 big blind raise. Let's take a look at this one first. From the big blind, the low jack raises, everyone folds to you. Take a look at this. The hands in red are 3-betting. Aces, kings, queens, ace, king, king, queen suited, queen, jack suited, a few more suited connected hands, some suited aces, and some suited kings. And then all the hands in green are calling. Pocket jacks and lower, lots of suited aces, some suited kings, suited connectors and suited gappers, ace, queen, king, queen, and ace, jack offsuit. Everything else folds in the big blind against just the 3 big blind raise. I know from talking with all of you on YouTube that people often raise even bigger in your games. If your opponents are making it 7 big blinds pre-flop, you should play even tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. So while this range looks quite tight, you should play even tighter if your opponents are raising to a bigger size, assuming they're raising with some sort of a reasonable range. And the neat thing about 1-2 is a lot of your opponents are going to be limping with a bunch of their medium strength hands and only raising with very, very strong hands. And that's another reason you should be playing even tighter. From out of position, you are going to under-realize your equity. When there's a rake, that's not good for you. When you're against a strong range, that's not good for you. All of this should force you to play tighter. Should we fold even if we're getting odds to set mine? Depends on the scenario, obviously. Depends on how bad your opponent's going to play. If you're getting exactly break-even odds to set mine that presumes that you're going to stack your opponent every single time, obviously you should not, right? Hello from Scotland. Hope you're having a great day. This video could be very handy. Good. Should you play in casinos where they only have 1 or 2 tables. Probably. Games are probably really good. It's all about assessing if you are better than your opponents because they're making blunders that you do not. So as you see here, this strategy is quite tight from out of position compared to what most people do. Most people play closer to a tournament range that has no rake and an ante in play against a tiny raise to 2 big blinds where you can call all the suited hands and lots of offsuit connectors and gappers and stuff. But when you are facing a raise to 3 big blinds or more in a cash game, you should be defending your big blind very tightly. That's the exact opposite of what most people want to do. They want to play loosey-goosey splash around poker. And, well, that's one humongous reason why they fail, because they're making consistent blunders over and over and over and over and over again from out of position. Here's another spot. 100 big blinds deep in the small blind versus an under-the-gun raise 7-handed. Take a look at this chart. You are supposed to play super duper tight. This chart actually presumes there is no rake in the games, also no ante. And if there is a rake and no ante, you're actually going to 3-bet everything you're going to play. You have to be super duper tight and nitty. It's horrible. But that's what you must do. Sometimes the structure of the game induces weak, tight play. Notice, though, whenever you are playing, you are being quite aggressive with the best hands. When you are playing cash games, you're going to find a lot of your bluffs are going to come from ace-x suited and king-x suited, and that's especially true if your range is going to be very tight in general. Notice that we are folding just a whole lot of suited connected hands. Even small and medium pairs from the small blind are just getting out of the way. It's not a good spot. Ace-queen offsuit just folds. King-queen, ace-jack just folds. Such is life. That's what you got to do if you want to win. It's unfortunate that the structure of most cash games in live poker are designed to heavily induce weak, tight play. But fortunately for you, your opponents will not use the weak, tight play. They're going to make these consistent mistakes that hopefully you will not. And if they're making consistent mistakes that you do not, you will have a very, very, very easy progression from 1-2 to higher stakes games. If you are struggling to win at 1-2 or 1-3 or even 2-5 no limit, you're probably playing way too loose preflop. We're not going to be discussing multi-way play in this video, but you will be shocked to learn that, well, you got to be tight in multi-way pots too. A lot of people think if you're getting better odds, you can call wider, but that is not true. You're going to find that as you're against more and more opponents, you're more likely to be drawing thin or dead. And that's also bad for you. Why are you supposed to play king X suited, but not set mine with small pairs? Are you referring to in the small blind scenario? You're only playing the best king X suited, king queen, king jack, and king 10. You're going to find that the hands with good blockers pre-flop are the ones that usually like bluffing. That's going to be ace X suited and king X suited. Here, if our range was wider, we would use weaker king X suited. But you're going to find the small pairs are just not especially good. Now, this chart does have us folding 8, 7, 6s, 5s, 4s, 3s, and 2s. If you think you're almost never going to get 3-bet by the big blind, and you think the initial raiser is going to be using a strategy that will let you see the showdown easily a lot of the time, then yeah, maybe you can splash around a little bit more with hands that have very, very good implied odds. But such is life, such is the case. The JL link is live, unfortunately. The JL link is wrong, unfortunately, on YouTube. Yeah, that's great. I guess I keep going. I don't know why, but sometimes this program sends me to the wrong link. Looks like some people are here on YouTube. Hello, everyone on YouTube. If you're here, click the like button, click the subscribe button. Does anything change if you're playing online Zoom or fast fold games? You got to play even better. If you're playing Zoom games or fast fold games, then you have to play closer and closer to GTO because your opponents are going to be playing closer and closer and closer to GTO. Simple as that. All right, let's take a look at another spot. You need to be 3-betting more often, and that kind of implies calling less often. Here's a scenario where 100 big blinds deep, you're in the cutoff against a hijack 3 big blind raise. That presumes everyone else has folded. In this scenario, you're 3-betting something like 10s and better, aces and kings, and ace-king pretty much every time. A lot of ace-x suited, some king-x suited, some weaker suited connected hands. And you're really only calling with the absolute best implied odds hands. That's going to be good suited aces, good suited Broadway hands, and some pairs. And the ace-queen offsuit. Rough spot. You got to be kind of tight again. A lot of people play far too loose. This is a spot where if you give people the 9-7 suited, they call every single time. And, you know, they're making blunders. If you make blunders over and over and over and over again on a very regular basis, you are going to lose. If you call with hands that just aren't going to flop well enough, to overcome the rake and the fact that you're against a presumably strong hijack range, you're going to have a difficult time winning at No Limit Texas Hold'em. So, in this scenario, again, just calling the best hands. Again, you may be surprised to see the small pairs folding. And look, I don't mind calling with the small pairs if you're not going to get 3-bet that often. If you're not going to get 3-bet that often, you can call a little bit wider. But these charts presume your opponents are competent. If your opponents are competent, they are going to be 3-betting a lot. Yet to act, they're not really going to be calling with a lot of marginal stuff that's going to result in you getting paid off very, very well after the flop for no good reason. So you need to make sure that you are adjusting to the games that you are playing. I would not recommend playing stuff like the 9-7 suited, or the King 10 offsuit, or the Ace 9 offsuit. These are especially bad hands. So, maybe you can call with the pairs, maybe you can continue with all suited aces, but that's about it. From the button against the cutoff raise, same thing. Notice you're just 3-betting something like 10s and better and Ace King for value. And then everything else is bluffs, right? We have some Ace X suited, King X suited, some Queen X suited, suited connected hands, and a few big offsuit blockers, especially Ace 10 offsuit. Again, the calling range, suited aces, suited Broadway hands, some suited connectors, and pairs, right? It's not that fancy. You're going to find that fancy play does not win at the small stakes games or any game where there's a decently high rake. You just have to play good, strong, fundamentally sound pre-flop poker. Most people, however, are either far too tight or far too weak, and they use very, very incorrect range compositions, and that is going to result in them having a difficult time winning right off the bat because they are making mistakes on a very regular basis. I mean, seriously, look, I just showed you 4 charts here for scenarios that come up all the time. And if you play far from what I have just shown you here, hate to break it to you, you're going to have a tough time winning. Yeah, you can win on a day-to-day basis, but my goal is to teach you all to be long-term winners. And you do that by learning to play good, strong, fundamentally sound poker. What if your opponent's 4-bet? Your life's easy. Look, you're 3-betting a very polarized range in this scenario. You have good hands that can easily continue, and marginal hands that can potentially call when you're in position, and then some junky blockers that are trash you can fold. We have charts for this at pokercoaching.com explaining how to play multi-way spots, heads-up spots, 3-bet, 4-bet, 5-bet pots, etc., etc., etc. Are we talking about cash games or tournaments? Or is my new book about cash game or tournaments? My new book, 100 Essential Tips to Master No Limit Hold'em, is about both cash games and tournaments. You're going to find that a lot of concepts that are based in No Limit Texas Hold'em apply to games of all structures. You just have to adjust to the ranges at play. You're going to find that tournament ranges are often looser than cash game ranges because there's no rake taken out of each pot and there's an ante in play. Also, there are payout implications. There is a section on payout implications in that book. Mistake number 2, most players slow play far too often. It is a tragic error among many small stakes cash game players. When is slow playing good? Well, slow playing is only good against aggressive opponents who will often bluff turns and rivers using big sizes, and specifically with hands that are almost always good and not all that vulnerable to being outdrawn. Most players, though, slow play stuff like top pair, thinking, all right, I'm going to trap them. But whenever your opponents can stick around, well, they're somewhat likely to be able to improve to beat top pair. And whenever they beat your top pair, that's when they're going to put in a lot of money, right? Realize also that most of your average 1-2 no limit players are not the types of players who are going to presume that your range is capped and then just start betting 3x the pot on the turn and 5x pot shoving the river. They don't do that. So if they don't do that, if they do not bluff enough, especially with big sizes, then you do not really want to slow play. The benefit of slow playing is inducing a ton of bluffs. And in cash games, your opponent should very often be using very big bluffs, especially when they block the potential nuts. It is vital for you to get maximum value from your strong hands, and the way you get value from your strong hands is to simply bet. Hello from Phoenix. The Phoenix Suns beat the New York Knicks yesterday. It devastated my kids. Let's take a look at some hands. King, Queen suited. We raise it up, playing 1-2. We make it 5 big blinds. Sure, why not? When should you make it bigger in cash games than 3 big blinds? Does anybody know? Take a second, write it in the comments section. If you're having fun, click the like and subscribe button. Is my camera off over here? Huh. Looks like it is a little bit. It's as if I moved it, even though I don't think I did. I mean, I guess I must have. All right. You should be raising bigger when your opponents are going to be continuing with the same range they would continue with if you made a smaller raise. If your opponents do not care about your raise size, they're going to stick around with the same range, you might as well make it bigger, right? Because they're just going to put in more money poorly. Obviously, if there are limpers, you want to be raising to a bigger size, but there are no limpers in this hand. Some people are saying if you're deeper stacked, you can raise bigger. It's not really a great reason to some extent because you should be using big overbets in general in cash games. But main time to raise bigger is when your opponents are going to stick around with all sorts of nonsense anyway. All right, king, queen suited, we raise. Big blind calls. Jack, 9, 5. Opponent checks. Reasonable spot to bet frequently. We go for a small size. Maybe bigger is fine, whatever. Opponent calls. Turns at 10. Opponent checks. This is a spot where slow playing would be very, very bad. Why would slow playing be very, very bad? Well, the opponent check called the flop. What do you think they check called the flop with? Steve says, you love my videos. Well, thank you. I love that you said that. Thank you. I appreciate it. This is a spot where when the opponent check calls the flop, they're going to have a lot of pairs and a lot of draws. How does that 10 connect with the pairs and draws? Well, if they had a pair, that's pretty good. And if they had a draw, it was probably something like king, queen, which doesn't help us. Queen 10, which just made a pair. 10, 8, which just made a pair. Those both have draws as well. Or other draws. What were other draws? 10, 7, that made a pair. 8, 7, that made a straight. 8, 6, which is no good. It's going to fold. And 7, 6, no good. That's going to fold. So, this is a spot where we definitely want to bet. Should we check and give them a chance to improve? No, because they're already sitting here with something reasonable. This is a very, very, very good spot to bet. Now, the question is, how much should we bet? Should we bet big or small? Well, in this situation, this player checked, and that is a blunder. Now, to show you why it is such a blunder. But I do think this is a reasonable spot to go pretty big, because especially at 1-2, if you consider your opponent's range, I literally just said your opponent either has a pair or a pair plus a draw at this point, right? So if your opponent has like king 5 suited, they'll probably fold to a big bet. But if they have any jack, they're not going to fold. If they have a 10, it probably has a draw with it. And if they have a 9, it probably has a draw with it. So they're just not folding. So yeah, bet on the bigger side. Like pot, maybe even over pot. Even though I do recognize in GTO world, this is a spot where perhaps you do not necessarily want to over pot because the board is not so dynamic anymore. Check, check though. River's a 2. Opponent checks. Bet big. This player bets $20. They get called. They think, all right, I did good. I got called. They were against the queen jack. And notice they just bet the flop and the turn and the river. They would have been able to get an extra, $35 or $50 in on the turn. And then, maybe they don't get called on the river if they go for a gigantic greedy bet. But they certainly put their opponent in a miserable spot with their entire range. And that allows you to bluff with a lot of hands too, which is quite valuable. Do not slow play. It is a blunder, especially when you do not block your opponent's continuing range. The only hand that really makes a whole lot of sense to slow play is exactly top set on uncoordinated boards where you cannot really get outdrawn. Everything else in small stakes games, just bet and put your money in the pot. Does Poker Coaching have a roadmap for the best order to watch videos? Absolutely yes. If you're new to pokercoaching.com, you have 2 options for where to start. First, if you are very new to poker, check out the Mastering the Fundamentals course. It's completely free. You can get it at pokercoaching.com/fundamentals. If you already are pretty decent at poker, you understand pot odds, implied odds, ranges, etc., go to the cash game or tournament masterclass, depending on which game you want to play. Once you get through that, send us an email. We can point you in the right direction. We also have advanced cash game and tournament courses on the site that are the most logical next step. Sometimes the players just want to see what you had. Yeah. That's good for you. All right, ace-7 suited. We raise it up. Big blind calls. We flop a flush draw. They check. Definitely bet. We could potentially go bigger in this spot. Small's fine too. Whatever. They call. Turns a flush. Opponent checks. What do we do? With the ace-high flush. Slow play is not the right answer. A lot of people in this spot think, oh, I want to slow play because I want my opponent to catch up. But what can they really catch up to that's all of a sudden going to want to bet the river and then call if you raise? Or check the river and if you bet, they're going to check raise you. Well, that's going to be full houses. How do you do against a full house with the ace-high flush? Not so good, right? This is definitely a spot to bet. We are not necessarily trying to get called by stuff like Jack 10 with no spade. It's probably going to fold. So we're going to go for the overbet. In this scenario, we are trying to get called by pairs plus flush draws, or flushes already. You'll find a lot of players, if they have a flush, they're just going to check, shove it all in. Jeremy says half pot. Half pot's better than nothing, but this is a spot to go big. I recognize in GTO world, this is probably not a spot where we necessarily want to be betting big, although the ace-high flush is a hand that usually does like to bet big. But this is a scenario in live poker. If your opponent has a pair plus a flush draw, they are not folding. If they have two pair, they are not folding. If they have a set, they will not fold. And if they have a flush, they will not fold. So be greedy. Try to get all the money. Opponent calls. Great. River's the 6 of hearts. Great. They check. I'm going to be shoving on every river. There's not a river that will convince me to not go all in. I do realize the board pairing would be an annoying scenario, but sometimes the opponent just has trips and calls it off, right? And they're still not going to fold a flush. Easy all in. Opponent calls. Jack 8, 2 pair. Good. We win. This is a spot where a lot of people mess up, though. They perhaps don't even bet the flop. That would be a mistake. With draws that can easily bet and then call a raise, you definitely want to bet. And the nice thing about the nut flush draw is it beats all the other draws. On the turn, a lot of people bet small, like half pot. Notice if you bet half pot here, the pot would have been 75 bucks going to the river, and the stacks would be 150. You're going to have a tough time getting a 2x pot river shove called. So instead, go bigger. Notice, like I said, 2 pairs not folding. Pair with flush draws not folding. And on the river, be greedy. Go for it. All of it. Get paid. Ship the dough. Do not slow play. That is a blunder. Next. A lot of players never bluff. And this leads to potentially a positive win rate. But the win rate is going to be small. And I don't want you to have a small win rate. I want you to have a big win rate. Sitting around waiting to cooler the bad players is a way to win at small stakes games if your opponents are horrible. And look, a lot of them are horrible. I get it. But I don't want you to win $4 per hour or $12 per hour even at 1-2 or 1-3. I want you to be winning like $25 or $30 or $40 an hour. I want you to be smashing your opponents. And you do that by winning pots that do not belong to you. Another problem with never bluffing is that you may find that as your opponents realize you simply do not bluff, they're going to have a hard time getting paid off when you make a strong hand. I mean, I play a regular game. It's a nice 100, 200 game, and there are 1 or 2 players in that game who simply do not bluff the river very often at all, especially using a large size. And they're playing very big. And that's a problem at all stakes. People just don't bluff enough, and if they don't bluff enough, that allows you to drastically overfold and never pay them. If your opponent does not have enough bluffs in their range, you should be folding all of your bluff catchers, and that makes your life easy. So when should you be bluffing? An easy way to start adding bluffs to your range, this is probably not even going to be enough bluffs, but an easy way to start bluffing, if you are not used to bluffing, or if you know that you simply do not bluff that often, is to bluff with hands that have the potential to make strong hands on future betting rounds. Let's take a look at some examples. Uh-oh, what's that? Can you play the Jack 8 hand in reverse? In a minute. Here you have the 10-8 suited. We raise it up, big blind calls. Queen, Jack, 6, 1 diamond. Opponent checks. This is a great spot to bet. Might as well. We bet $7. Opponent calls. Turns a 4 diamonds. Opponent checks. This is a spot where some people think that they should check it back because they don't want to get check raised. But with this hand, you don't really even care if you get check raised because you have a pair plus a flush draw. Now, if we do go 45, as we do over pot here on this very dynamic board, in GTO world, we should actually not get check raised all that often because when we go for this humongous size, we are saying I have either a very good made hand, like top pair good kicker and better, or I have a very high equity draw, or some sporadic nonsense. We're not talking about that here, though, like the King 5. Okay, should we be getting check raised all that often from a range that is not especially strong if the opponent has a hand that is not super duper strong? And the answer is no. As you bet bigger and bigger and bigger, you should get check raised less and less often. Now, if you know your particular opponent loves check raising with any sort of pair because they think big bets are always bluffs, then maybe you shouldn't use this size. But in GTO world, this is a great size, and it's going to allow you to bet the turn with a very strong polarized range, and then you can blast the river as you feel inclined. Notice here, let's play this hand in reverse. Give your opponent Jack 8, Jack 10, Ace Jack, Queen 7. You check call the flop, and now, on this 4 diamonds turn, your opponent bets 1.3x pot. Be honest in the chat, do you call with the Jack 8? That's a miserable spot with the Jack 8, and you should probably just fold. You're going to find that as stacks get deeper and deeper, you especially want to be drawing to hands that are almost always good if you do improve. And if Jack 8 improves to a Jack or an 8, you don't necessarily win, right? We only do this against players we've seen fold. Well, the neat thing about this play, Chris, is that most players are not facing 1.3x pot overbets ever in 1-2 no limit. Because no one plays well. If no one plays well in your games and they only half pot it, yeah, no one's going to fold the Jack 8 to a half pot bet. You're going to find that most players in most games drastically overfold to overpots. They think, too rich for my blood, and then they fold. So many players think, oh, my opponents always call. But if they're always calling with what? King high, ace high, bottom pair? If they're always calling with king high, ace high, and bottom pair, yeah, stop bluffing so much and just go for value with middle pair and print all the money. Look, poker is easy when your opponents make obvious blunders. When your opponents make obvious blunders, poker becomes super duper easy. So if you're playing against extreme calling stations, value bet way thinner. All right, here I have a raise. We defend the big blind with 9-7 suited. Flop a gut shot. Check, check. That's good. Turns the 6 of clubs. We could bet, we can check. I think either play is very viable. The tough thing about this spot, though, is that when it does go check, check, if the opponent is competent, they're going to have a lot of medium strength made hands. So we have two options. We can either blast the turn and blast the river, or we can check, and then if they do bet, we can potentially check raise. You're going to find that almost no one checks back the flop with a set or 2 pair or any hand that is especially good. So this is a spot where I think our only good options are to either bet turn and river big, or check looking to check raise. And if it does go check, check, we can conceivably bluff the river using a big size. We check, opponent bets $10. I just told you what we're going to do. We're going to raise. And again, don't make it $25 over their $10 bet. You got to blast them. We are trying to make the opponent fold out pocket 10s. No one's going to fold pocket 10s to a $25 check raise. You got to go big and put them in a miserably bad scenario. What do we do if we get shoved on? We got to fold. It's annoying. But yeah, you should fold in this spot if you get shoved on. The nice thing about this spot is that you are almost never going to get check raised, or you're never going to get re-raised. If you do get re-raised, they probably just have a super duper good hand. So look to bluff in spots where you have some equity. There'll be some other spots to bluff too, where you have less equity. But typically when you are putting in polarized betting ranges, well, putting in raises with polarized betting ranges, your opponent should not be re-raising very often at all, because when you have a good hand, you just stack them. It's no good to get stacked. So those are 3 big mistakes that you must avoid at 1-2 no limit. To all the people in the chat, I play 1-3, I play 2-4, I play 2-5. The mistakes still apply. Mistake number 1 we discussed today, playing too many hands pre-flop. Number 2, slow playing big hands. Number 3, never bluffing. And if you avoid these 3 big errors, you will make way more money from poker. Simple as that. Can we play that Jack 8 hand in reverse? Let's give our opponent Jack 8 suited. They call pre-flop. They flop middle pair. They got to call the small bet. They turn an 8. We check. We overpot it. This is already an annoying spot. I don't really see how they can fold. River's a 6. We check. They shove. Got to call. Don't block any bluffs. Have 2 pair. You may even potentially beat some people who are value betting thin with like kings or something. So look, this is a spot where, yeah, they got unlucky. But it's also a spot where we played in a manner that resulted in the opponent getting stacked. It is important to make sure you are playing in a manner that stacks your opponents. I hear it's Cyber Week. That's when everyone gets on the internet and cybers. This is a spot where a lot of people give discounts, and poker coaching is no different. We have a 6-month membership on sale right now, and we're adding A big bonus. We just added a brand new multi-part series for Poker Coaching Premium members called The Hero's Journey, where I, Jonathan Little, am taking on coaching Slick Rick. This guy right here. I'm going to have lunch with him tomorrow. We are doing 1 hour of coaching every week for a year. We're about 2 months in. I thought he was going to win about $5,000 or $10,000 a month, grinding out 1-3 and 2-5 no limit. He's already won $100,000 in the first 2 months. He's in there. He's grinding a lot. He's making content. He has a YouTube channel. Make sure you check it out. And he's already won $100,000 in the first 2 months. That's good. He's going to continue the grind. He's going to keep working hard. He's already playing bigger stream games already, successfully, like 10-25, 25-50, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's good. And I'm going to show you every single coaching session that we do if you're a Poker Coaching Premium member for the next year. Also, my team and I have been working very hard to release a brand new, gigantic cash game course. It is the advanced cash game course featuring all sorts of high-level content that I helped put together, as well as all of these crushers. We're going to go through all the course content in just a second. What stakes does Slick Rick play? Slick Rick started off playing 1-3 no limit, literally 2 months ago. He ran hot in some tournaments. He won a World Series circuit ring. He almost won 2, actually. So he got a hold of some money from that. He won a few online tournaments as well. Crushed up some cash games as well. I think his regular game is now about 5-10. So he's gone from 1-3 to 5-10 in 2 months, which is good. It's exactly what we're going for. The problem is that you cannot actually buy the cash game course, the advanced cash game course. But if you join Poker Coaching Premium during this Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Cyber Week sale, you will get free access to this course for as long as you are a Poker Coaching member. Let's go through some of the content. Chris Brewer, super crusher in tournaments, you all know that. But did you know he's been playing humongous nosebleed cash games for the last few years? He's absolutely beating up the games. He's crushing it. He also has some streams where he is playing live cash games, a lot of the Triton games and Hustler games, where they're playing 100, 200, 500, 1,000, et cetera, et cetera. And he goes through a lot of those hands that he plays. He also discusses when you should be playing GTO and when you should be maximally exploiting your opponents to make a ton of money in these games. He also worked with Rampage Poker a little bit. Rampage Poker can't help himself. He loves to bluff. And Chris Brewer and Rampage went through some of Rampage's biggest punts, and Chris is trying his best to get Rampage to chill out. Is Slick Rick a genius or just disciplined? LOL. He's kind of young. All young people lack discipline. My job is to rein him in and make sure he doesn't make blunders. To some extent. A lot of our sessions are, hey, when you go out to these tournament series, try to eat well, try to eat good sleep, don't be crazy, show up, play good poker, stay sane, ask what Jonathan would do in this spot, and win a circuit ring. Nice, easy game. I've been helping my wife at poker a little bit. She does not like studying poker, but would you believe it? She actually won a tournament the other day. Let me show you the trophy. My wife won a tournament just the other day for $12,000, and she won this trophy. This is not my trophy. This is my wife's trophy. She also got this bracelet. Nice, huh? Nice 12K win for her. All right. Chris Brewer has a ton of content in the course. He's a super duper crusher. Literally one of the absolute best poker players in the world, especially when it comes to playing against good, strong world-class opponents. And he's a crusher. Justin Saliba also has a ton of content in this advanced cash game course. For those who do not know, Justin Saliba came to me 6 or 7 years ago, and he told me that my Instagram was terrible. Justin Saliba was a college student. He was going to become an engineer. That got derailed whenever I taught him to be really good at poker. He started off playing 5 cent, 10 cent online. A few years later, when it was time for him to get out of college, he was going to play 5, 10, and 10, 20 live. I've been working hard with Justin for a very long time, and now Justin is literally one of the best poker players in the world in both cash games and tournaments. Who'd have thought? And in this course, he discusses all sorts of stuff, such as defending against aggression when deep stacked. It's tough when your opponents blast you, kind of like I was showing you today with those bluffs. When your opponents start overpotting it, it's rough. It's hard. We also discusses why making or not being able to the nuts is very important in deep stack poker. He discussed many out of position GTO concepts, because that is a very tough spot to play when you are playing deep stacked cash games. He also teams up with the next-gen poker guys. They discuss the Deuce 7 game and the stand-up game, and he discusses transitioning from live back to online cash games, which is something, some people do because they want to be able to put in a lot of volume. We also have a lot of content from Brad Wilson. Brad Wilson has been crushing the online six-handed games for forever. He has a lot of content on pokercoaching.com, and he has added to that here, where he discusses various exploits for 6-max online cash games today. He also discusses how you go about taking advantage of your opponent's mistakes, attacking their imbalances, quickly tagging players, and all sorts of exploits you can do against both good players and bad players. I, Jonathan Little, have a lot of content in this course. We have fully updated pre-flop charts for 6-handed online games with a rake and for 8-handed live games without a rake, because that's what you all asked for. If you're playing live games with a rake, just use the 6-handed charts and presume that the early position spot should be very, very tight. I go through these charts. We discuss all sorts of scenarios. These charts do have multi-way simulations built in. These charts have, if there's a raise and a call, the charts tell you what you need to be doing. You may not like it. It's going to tell you to be kind of tight, but such is life. I discuss going through the 8-handed charts, the 6-handed charts, and then I have a lot of situations discussing post-flop plays, such as advanced bet sizing on the flop, when you should be betting very tiny or very large. We also discuss exploitative reasons for betting very tiny and very large, not just from a GTO point of view. You want to make sure you're always exploiting what your opponents do incorrectly. We discuss when you should be continuation betting on the turn. Did you know when you continuation bet the flop, you should not continuation bet the turn all that often? A lot of people think if they bet the flop, they should keep betting. But absolutely not. When you bet the flop with all or a lot of your range, you still have a lot of junk in your range. But when your opponent calls, they don't have any junk anymore because they would have folded it. And that makes the ranges run a lot closer. No one has much of an advantage in that spot. We do not have much of an advantage in that spot. You don't get to bet all that often. Next, we talk about playing on the river, various deep stacked adjustments, pushing equity with deep stacks, and really learning to crush your opponents from both a GTO and exploitative point of view. I also have a large section on how to play multi-way because I've listened to all of your feedback and you say you play in games where it goes raise, call. So how do you play in those spots? And again, you're not going to like it. You got to play kind of tight and cautious and passive. Such is life. The reason for that is because no one has much of a gigantic advantage in multi-way pots. And if you do not have a gigantic advantage, you should be betting with a strong polarized range. And as it gets more and more multi-way, you're forced to even bet a little bit more linear with fewer bluffs. Tough. We also have a section featuring Jonathan Jaffe, who is one of the biggest winners in online heads-up games. He's been crushing forever. Him and Justin Sleba get in there and battle it out, playing 100 and 200 big blinds deep in a cash game structure. They play, they battle it out, and then they go through and they discuss a lot of these scenarios together so that, well, they can both improve at poker, and you can too. Justin Sleba actually recorded all of his content live so that you can get his thought process in real time when he was playing against Jonathan Jaffe. Oh, back to Rampage Poker. I'm doing my best to help Rampage succeed. He just can't help himself, though. He has every tool available to him, but he just does not know how to use it. Rampage Poker gets in there with Justin Sleba, and they analyze the match where Rampage beat Doug Polk heads up recently at live heads up no limit hold'em at the Lodge. Lucky for Rampage. Doug's probably a better heads up player than Rampage. So yeah, that's it. The Cyber Week sale membership is available right now. Check it out at pokercoaching.com/cyberweek. Do not forget the bonus. We have lots more content coming out featuring me and Slick Rick. I do not know how this is going to go. He might epically fail. I don't think so, though. He's smart. He's disciplined. He's working hard. And he seems to mostly listen to me. It turns out when people listen to what I tell them to do, they often do very, very well. It's just a matter of having the resources available and utilizing them intelligently and not making all the mistakes that everyone else makes along the way up. Look, if I had me to teach me whenever I was 21 years old, I would have got to the high stakes way faster than I did. and I would have saved a lot of mental trauma and heartache that I'm sure that I inflicted upon myself. And if I can help people do that, I'm more than happy to. And hopefully you all can learn through my work with Slick Rick. So that's it. Join pokercoaching.com. Join the premium membership right now during Cyber Week, and you'll have access to the advanced cash game course. We also have an advanced tournament course. Also, going through all sorts of scenarios that are very, very high level for tournaments. We put that out somewhat recently. We also have a cash game and tournament masterclass. If you are not already beating small stakes cash games or tournaments, those courses will get you up to speed. You'll have a bunch of questions. How do you expand the tables? How do you expand ranges when there's not a full table? We have charts on pokercoaching.com for shorter-handed play. Check them out. In general, though, as a bit of an oversimplification, if you're playing four-handed, just presume you're playing six-handed, but the first two players folded. And there you are. You're in the cutoff. How do you keep your mind going after a 5-hour session? Work hard, study, realize that if you learn how to play all the common spots, those will become somewhat automatic so that you can focus on other things. And, I realize people get tired and they lose focus. And if you lose focus, but you still play very well because you know how to play poker very well, that's going to be way better than if you do not know what you're doing. The thing is, a lot of people, when they go on tilt, in quotation marks, because they're tired, annoyed, frustrated, not focusing, whatever, when they go on tilt, they revert back to the things they actually know, things they definitively know. And the thing is, most poker players don't definitively know a whole lot, and that results in them just blundering left and right and all over. You can relate to the Justin Sliba path. You wish you'd met me when you were studying for your engineering degree. Well, at pokercoaching.com, we do a lot of stuff right, but we also do a lot of stuff wrong. Back in the day, I was really bad at social media, and Justin came to me and said, let me try to fix it. And you know what? He did. And then I gave him more leeway, more responsibilities. Fix Twitter, fix YouTube. You all are here because Justin Sliba got to work and fixed the things that I was doing wrong. He added a lot of value. With any job you are trying to get, don't just go apply and hope someone gives you the job. Get in there, show them how you can make them more money or make their life easier. They're probably going to hire you. Even today, if someone tells me there is something very, very wrong at pokercoaching.com and you know how to fix it, and you show me that you can fix it, you may have a job. Should you play GTO when you're playing small stakes games? When you first get to the table, you should pretty much always assume some things about your opponents. You should definitely not presume your opponents in small stakes cash games are going to be playing anywhere near GTO. If it goes limp, 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 you already know right off the bat, they're not playing GTO. So you should always exploit general player pool tendencies of your opponents. Now, when you are playing, maybe you can make some broad generalizations, like the young player sitting with $1,000 at 1-2, who is seemingly competent, is probably going to be at least okay. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But if you see a player sitting there with $162 and can barely handle their chips, they're probably going to be worse. They're going to be making more stereotypical errors. So you can, to some extent, make broad generalizations like that, but you should be quick and figure out quickly what your opponent does incorrectly. We actually have part of the advanced cash game course discussing this. Quickly tagging players. This is an important skill a lot of people lack. You can very, very quickly figure out if someone is good or bad, even when you're playing online, just by observing them play for a very short period of time. Are the purple poker coaching hats for sale? We do not sell any merch. I do not want to be one of those sites that sold a lot of merch. Instead, we give it away for free. It is completely free for Poker Coaching Premium members. If you're a Poker Coaching Premium member, send us an email at support@pokercoaching.com and we will give you a free hat. I will literally mail it to you. What were these players' starting bankrolls? I don't know. Whatever I'm recommending. I honestly don't remember. How do you stop your mind from wandering? You can do all sorts of things. You can do stuff like recognizing that every time that you hear the cards shuffling, it's time to get up and pay attention. You can, something I do is that whenever I am under the gun and I fold, that's the spot you're going to be folding the most often, I will almost always get up and take a little stretch. Why? Well, I don't have any sort of scientific proof behind this, but I think getting up, not even really paying attention to poker for that hand, taking that one hand off out of 8, or whatever it is, goes a long way to, I think, helping me maintain at least some level of focus throughout the day. Some people have a rubber band on their wrist and they snap it a bunch. Some people move chips from one stack to another. I don't recommend that because you might misclick. But doing little things to change it up and help you refocus is very important. Whenever I do get up and I walk around, I realize I'm going to sit back down and I'm going to do my best to focus for the next 7 hands. And it turns out I'm okay at keeping my brain straight for 7 hands. How do you play against big gamblers? They get annoyed and they go over the top and they jam. Do you take a flip of pocket sevens? Do you think pocket sevens is a flip against someone who is going all in on every hand? Pocket sevens is great. Is stereotyping okay in poker? Depends on what you're stereotyping. I mean, look, in reality, I guess the answer is yes. Yeah, sevens is great against 100% range. Look, you got to realize everything you do at the table conveys information. Is that straight from Daniel Negreanu's masterclass? I think it probably is. Phil Ivey's one of them. And, if you're loosey-goosey having a sandwich, that's going to be different than if you're sitting there super-duper buttoned up. Anyway, look, a lot of people get it in their minds that if players play a lot of hands, that they must be difficult to play against. But if they're playing a lot of hands, it implies they have far too much garbage in their range. And we discussed thoroughly in the Advanced Cash Game course and the Cash Game Masterclass and the tournament courses how to play against players who have ranges that are far too wide. It's a very common player type, and they are some of the most profitable players to play against because they are consistently putting in lots of money with ranges that are far too weak, or they're getting to the turn and river with ranges that are far too weak and then just having to check fold because they don't have anything. Is it okay to listen to music when you are playing poker? I would generally recommend against it because whenever you do that, you are naturally distracting yourself. I would definitely not recommend listening to podcasts or audiobooks at the poker table. I know I make audiobooks and a lot of people listen to them at the poker table. I would not recommend that in general. Now, the only time I really listen to music or whatnot at the poker table anymore is when I have someone at the table who is especially annoying and I really do not want to hear them. Of course, you should be strong-minded and not let anyone who talks bother you at the poker table because talking is a natural part of the human experience. But sometimes you don't want to hear it. I get it. So, yeah, put in your headphones and forget about it. But whenever you do have headphones in, you will inevitably miss some things that your opponents say. And if you're missing stuff, that may cost you a little bit of value. That said, if you don't care and you're fine losing value, then put in your earphones and don't worry about it. I think there was a study a long time ago about how people who listen to music focus worse than people who do not listen to music, but they can focus longer. Maybe that's good for poker, maybe not. It's better to listen to music than watch TV. Well, obviously. Definitely do not do anything to distract yourself. I had this theory a long time ago. Who knows if it's right or not. But at Bellagio, when I used to play tournaments there, the way the tournament room was set up is that one side of the room could see 4 different TVs where they always had sporting events on. And the other side, if you were facing the other direction, could not see any sporting events. I always wanted to sit on the side that could not see any sporting events at all. So I definitely think you do not want to do anything to distract yourself. A lot of players bet on sports when they're playing poker. And they're in their phone, watching it on their phone, or refreshing an app, or whatever, watching it on TV. It's a blunder. That is a blunder because that will suck away your attention. You should listen to music in tournaments because tournaments last longer. Well, just get good at focusing. Or do what I said. Do the little trick. Take 2 minutes off every 15. Makes your life easy. What about when you're playing online? Again, look, do whatever you want, right? Do whatever you want. Do whatever works for you. I personally like silence. Whenever I play online poker, I want no music. Whenever I used to stream online poker, I would play no music, and everyone's like, oh, where's your music? The answer is I don't need the music. I don't want to be distracted. I want to think about playing good poker. Lee Jones talks about how players give away a lot of information. Yes, players do give away a lot of information. So yeah, that's that. I hope you all have a wonderful day. I hope if you want, if you want to get good at poker over the next year, or the next 6 months for this offer, I don't think you can go wrong. And you know what? If you sign up at pokercoaching.com/cyberweek and you do not like it, you don't think it's for you, you don't think it adds value, send us an email within a month and I'll give you all of your money back. How many training sites do that? Won't everyone cancel? No, they don't, because we add a lot of value. But look, if it's not for you, cancel within a month and you get all your money back. Costs you $0. Literally try it for free. Well, it's not for free. Try it with the idea that if you do not like it, you can get a full refund. Simple as that. How much should you study? As much as you easily can. If you wanted to become a doctor How much should you study before you go into your first operation? Well, probably a lot, right? Now, poker is not like being a doctor, but it is to some extent. A lot of people think that just because they can put the money in the pot that they, let's say, deserve to be there. And maybe they do, quote unquote, deserve to be there. But should they expect to have an edge? No, they should not expect to have an edge. They should expect to lose. But most people don't go in to sit at the poker table expecting to lose. But if you have not studied a decent amount of time at poker, you're probably not going to be good at poker. Who'd have thought? So if you're not already crushing your game, you should be studying quite a lot. If you are actively trying to move up in stakes, you should be studying a lot. Now, what is a lot? It varies from person to person. So you got to figure out what works for you. But I mean, if you're playing 20 hours of poker a week and studying one, you're probably not going to make it unless you're already crushing your game pretty hard. Mandatory to subscribe to poker coaching at least once. Yeah, and if you don't like it, it costs you $0. I don't really know what else you all want from me. I make you an app so you can use it on your phone. We give you all sorts of pre-flop charts. We give you all sorts of quizzes. We have beginner course, intermediate course, advanced course. We have answers to questions like how much cash do you need to play lice poker? And, literally everything's there. Everything you need to become a strong, successful poker player is in pokercoaching.com. For bankroll advice, check out pokercoaching.com/bankroll. We have the bankroll Bible right there for you. Enjoy it. That's me it for today. Check out pokercoaching.com/cyberweek if you're not already a member. Thanks again for being here. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful holiday season. My life is going to be very hectic over the next month. Both my kids have birthdays. Then I'm going to the Bahamas. And my parents are coming to town. It's going to be fun. Can we go through a recap of how to play against all the different types of players? No. Go to pokercoaching.com and go through the cash game or the tournament masterclass. We do that there for you. Good luck. Have fun. Click the like and subscribe button before you leave. Have a great holiday season. Check out pokercoaching.com/cyberweek. I'll talk to all of you next time. Bye-bye.